Morgan Adams Jr., and he apparently also only gives his business address in court in Anacapa, but I think he lives in the county in the state, so legally he's fine. And then judge for the Superior Court number 3 is Brian Hill. He's had some tough cases. I really don't want to say much about Brian Hill, but he's had some tough cases. The judge I saw today in court said he had sat on, I think he said 27 murder cases. And that covers those judges. So nobody's running for office number 1. How interesting. Then you got the County Board of Supervisors District 1. Apparently, Joan Hartman is the incumbent, and she's running again. Then District 4, incumbent is Peter L. Adam, who I liked. He had full of fire when he first got elected over some rural issues. But when I asked him to do something about indicting Tom Sneddon, who had been caught in his lies in the Michael Jackson trial, he just didn't have time for it. Wasn't going to get involved. Didn't want to look at the evidence. Very disappointed. And he sort of mellowed out, trimmed his mustache way back. Very disappointed in how he went down. But he's running for re-election, and the candidate against him is Bob Nelson, who has no ballot designation, but apparently has a P.O. box in Santa Maria. So these things are happening now. If you want to run for office, the reason I'm taking time to put this in front of your face is because right now is the time to go to the elections office, either Maria, Santa Barbara, or Lompoc, and say, hey, I want to run for Congress or Assembly or Judge. Now here's an issue. Do you have to be a member of the bar to run for Judge? A guy I interviewed in Central Texas was not a member of the bar. He was a carpenter. And he ran for, I think it was the Supreme Court of Texas. And they said, you can't run. You're not a judge. You're not an attorney. You can't run. And it went up in a court case on appeal, and it was overturned. He said he has to go on the ballot. You have to let him run. I think the same would be true in California. And it has a fabulous pension, although the judge that I saw in the elections office today on November 1st, he was complaining, if you die one day before you get your pension, you got to serve 20 years. So if you don't get on the bench till you're 50, you got to work till you're 70 to get a pension. If you die one day sooner, your wife gets nothing. Well, I didn't make the rules. That's the way it is. So office number 5 does not appear to have anybody filing yet. So office 1 and that's office 5 of Superior Court. But District 1 has Laura K. Capps. Oh my goodness, against incumbent Das Williams. Now, you don't suppose Laura K. Capps could be related to the infamous Lois Capps, who did everything the Republicans pretty much wanted her to do, but ran as a Democrat? That would be interesting. And she gives her address as a P.O. Box 2 on De La Guerra in Santa Barbara. So, that's what we have running. So with all those in front of us, it's a lot of things you can run for. And on this live show today on November 1st, I want to know why Roger Tanner's calling me from Ohio. What's up, Roger? I'm going to put you on speakerphone.
I don't need 3 anymore. Now I need 2.
All right. Thanks for that. I'll get back to you later, Roger. We're doing a live show.
I'll tell you some good news.
Good news. All right.
If you watch Sandusky Registry or pull that up, I'm telling you what, they're coming down on a prosecutor like you can't imagine right now.
Which Ohio county?
That would be, I think it's Lake County.
Lake County, Ohio. I'll take a look at it, Roger, but right now I got a live show and things to do here.
Well, things are looking good.
Thanks.
Election's Tuesday.
Okay. Don't forget to vote, Roger. Maybe I'll fly out to Ohio. Maybe I'll be a ghost voter and I'll fly out there and vote for somebody who forgot.
Well, I had one of the guys, a new guy's running for mayor, actually asked me for my vote. He says I really made a difference in this community.
I'm sure you did. All right. Thanks, Roger. Bye-bye. Roger Tanner calling in to tell us the Lake County prosecutor in Ohio is in deep doo-doo. A lot of them should be. Sneddon, they should dig Sneddon up, indict him, convict him, and hang his corpse from the courthouse flagpole for what he did to Michael Jackson. Bunch of crud. So what else we got? We got the Democratic County Committee, number 2 supervisor. Yeah, and then we got this Laramore's running. Hillary Denise Blackerby is also running. And also there's offices that you never hear about. They're like committee offices and things for the Democratic and Republican parties, I think. I think the Libertarians stopped even running people. They reorganized the way they do things. So I'm just going through the list, and it looks to me like we need more candidates. There just isn't very many candidates running for anything. But then again, your vote can be stolen because we have these electronic voting machines that are just not verifiable. So I can understand why a lot of you people just don't even bother to vote. But we'll see if some of these people that live in their P.O. box, which means they don't want to tell you where they really live, except the one in Boise, Idaho. That was funny. Oh, yes, and the mail came today. You remember that young black man that was trying to keep people from being wrongfully thrown and evicted from their homes on false foreclosure paperwork? His name is Anthony Troy Williams. Well, I just got the letter back from the United States District Court. They're playing games with me. They denied my first request, so I put in a stronger request. And what they're saying is order reassigning case. So they're reassigning the case is reassigned from Chief United States District Judge J. Michael Seabright to United States District Judge Leslie E. Kobayashi. The case number shall change in all future filings. In other words, they're not answering my media request. They're saying, now you got to file it again, and then they attach another thing. Oh, by the way, they want me to file electronically. How nice. But they're not saying yes or no. They're just delaying the whole process. I want a camera in that courtroom, and we submitted over 20 people's affidavits saying they can't fly out to Hawaii because they're working or whatever, and they want on second thought camera in that courtroom to see if this Anthony Troy Williams is really a bad scoundrel, or was he just trying to save people's homes from fraudulently created false forged documents. I think I said that right. False forged documents. Maybe if I tighten up my tie, I can choke on it a little bit. All right, are we ready to go to Las Vegas? Let's roll it. This is reporter Michael Warnken in Las Vegas at Freedom Fest. First clip, first interview. Let's do it.
This is Michael Warnken here in Las Vegas at Freedom Fest for On Second Thought, and I am here with
Robin Kerner.
And what organization?
Well, can I say robinkerner.com?
You may, absolutely.
Not just that. I'm faculty at Foundation for Economic Education. Check out their booth over there.
Okay.
And also, I've recently been made the academic dean for the John Locke Institute.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't that sound highfalutin? Oh. It's not really that highfalutin, but it sounds highfalutin.
Well, John Locke was an important figure in
important.
libertarian philosophy, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yeah. Can you say a founding father of classical liberalism, maybe?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So that's a new angle I'm going off off on. Yeah.
So you're here. You were on a couple panels so far.
Yeah, a few panels. So the first one I've already done is Brexit. That was great in the main hall over there. I'm very passionate about Brexit. Today I'll be talking about whether millennials are destroying freedom. I guess more than any other generation. I think that's a hard claim to make.
I don't know that they have the capacity to destroy anything.
Oh, controversial.
Well, it might be their indifference completely.
Oh, we'll talk about that. And then I'm doing masculinity, toxic masculinity, right? How to cure that. But that one's kind of cool because they've titled the panel. They've taken the title from an article I wrote that was "The Cure for Toxic Masculinity is Real Masculinity." So we'll see how that goes. Right. And then I'm doing a panel on winning elections out of nowhere, which is kind of really in my wheelhouse: political psychology, insurgent political movements, that kind of thing. How to create one. So so they got me busy here at Freedom Fest.
Okay. Yeah. And you yourself are a rather large libertarian. Is that fair to say?
Oh God.
Well, wait. We're not talking party. Just libertarian philosophy.
In the United States, the word libertarian has become associated with what I think you could almost call a neo-religious or political orthodoxy.
Okay.
And I don't want those connotations. Because I'm kind of with Kierkegaard, if you label me, you negate me.
Oh.
So I feel more comfortable, I don't like labels. I feel more comfortable with classical liberal as a label because I think libertarianism as understood by many people, has become bastardized. Bits of classical liberalism has fallen off. Okay. Other bits have been kind of concretized in unsophisticated ways that I don't think are actually true to the tradition.
Well, then how about toxic liberal or toxic libertarian?
Toxic. What is that as opposed to an orthodox one? I don't know. I mean, look. I when people say, put me in that group. This is my political family, yeah. Okay. I just try and avoid labels if I can. I just don't think they're helpful. So, and I have some differences. I mean, we all have some differences with each other in that political family, I guess. But,
So it's fair to say you feel at least comfortable rubbing elbows with the people that might be walking down the halls.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. No, these are, I mean, like I said, I'm with Fee over there. Okay. And, absolutely. There's great people here, and I know many of them, and it's been great to meet them, including you, my friend, including you, yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let's skip over. So the first topic you mentioned when we're talking here, Brexit. Tell us about that.
Brexit, what a cluster, right? What a cluster. So I know you and I share a love of history.
Yes.
Although I will bow to your knowledge on anything related to law and all of that. But I do see Brexit as part of I see it in a kind of amateur historical perspective, if I can put it that way. Okay. It is a massive thing. Okay. Now, if this does not happen.
Well, wait, how about we explain it? Because, we might need to, because you want to be honest, Brexit really started, 4 or 5 years ago? Maybe,
So the vote for Brexit was 2016, when it was a referendum.
And wait. And we're talking about England, too.
We're talking about the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, yes. Including the 4 nations of England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Okay. So even that's complicated, isn't it?
And not Southern Ireland, right?
And not, Ireland, as they come to us. Yeah. All kinds of trouble. For a long time. Yes, so the British people voted in the largest democratic exercise in British history to leave the European Union, right? The UK being one of 28 countries in the EU.
And this was done by ballot?
This was done by ballot, a referendum. Referenda are very rare in the UK.
And what was the vote?
The vote was 52% to leave, 48% to remain.
Very close, but people said what they wanted.
Well, I don't know that that's very close.
Oh, really?
I mean, that 4% margin is 8% of either camp, right? There are many elections, many big decisions, binary decisions have been decided on much less. And one of the important points that goes to that point is people on both sides, especially the Remain side, because they knew they were going to win, right? The stay-in side, said, whatever it is, even by one vote, we have to honour the result. And everyone was like, yeah, we do, because that's how democracy works, right? That's how, and here was where I was going, every election in British history has always worked. Now, if for the first time, the British people stay at home whilst the political class reverse a democratic vote, whatever they call it.
Wait. Isn't that the problem? That the people voted for it, but then the elected class didn't really honor it?
It has not yet been honored. And so the fight is still
and how many years has this been?
We are 3 years in. And And to make it worse, in law, in British law, we had the exit date was March 29th, and then that got moved. Then it was April 7th, then that got moved, and then it was. And the next one is October 31st. And now nobody trusts any of those politicians, surprise, surprise, right? So to finish, the one point I was trying to make there is, if we let them screw us again, and we don't riot, it will be the first time in 1,000 years of British history, where the people say, not only are you reducing our liberty and our representation, we knowingly are allowing you to do it. We're going to let it go by. Now, the Brits have never let that go by before, since, I'll go back to 1014, right? If they do it this time, then it's not the country I know and I am no longer British. I mean, I don't know how else I can say it. I don't think that's going to happen, but it can go either way, because there are huge forces.
So wait. So is there actually talk in the streets that they might do this?
Not yet.
But the feeling's there.
Yeah. Among some, yes.
I mean,
it's hardening.
This is important because, as you say, there's the general will of the people, and I mean, we go back to our great documents. There was a wonderful document. I want to put the date, but I can't pull it off the back of my head. The Arbroath Abbey. The Declaration of Arbroath Abbey. Yeah.
I don't know the date either, but yes. Yeah.
At no point in time will we, and it was against the English. So someone who's ignorant of our customs, we will not bow down to that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things, and this actually goes to. Well, no, I won't even go there. It's too complicated. But one of the things that I think those of us in the liberty movement often fail to appreciate as an important historical point is that the advance of liberty has so often just been the flip side of a coin, the other side of which is, we won't have you imposing your culture or your politics or your roles on us. Like most of those huge steps up have been that. Magna Carta was actually that. And Magna Carta was that because everybody knows that John, the cod history of Magna Carta, John was screwing everybody.
Well, the barons.
And the barons were like, we ain't having this. But that had been going on for a while. The trigger for Magna Carta was actually when John handed the sovereignty of it wasn't the United Kingdom, of the British, of Britain, wasn't even
to the Pope,
England, to the Pope, and then leased it back, right? It was instead of Brussels, it was Rome, but it was the exact same thing. And John had no right to do that. I mean, we didn't have the formulated philosophy of delegated power at that point, obviously, but it was already starting. It was already starting,
and it was done at a sword point. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It wasn't and as many times as they want to say, it wasn't the king acquiescing, voluntarily. No, it was.
Yeah. And I think the parallels between that and this are great. As I also think the parallels between Brexit and the foundation of our beautiful country.
And I go back to, again, Arbroath Abbey, for as long as but 100 of us remain alive.
It's good stuff, isn't it?
We will never surrender.
It's good stuff.
It's not for liberty, it's not for riches, not for glory or what. It's for it's for freedom and that which no one can give but with life itself, right?
And people, and just to round out that point, people most starkly, most clearly experience their loss of freedom or their threat to freedom as being ruled over by those that they do not identify with. That is the European Union.
And will not honor their customs and their freedoms and what they want.
Yeah. Unless, as you say, it's at sword point.
Yes.
I mean, now it's not swords, but it's definitely, there's this great feeling of imposition from a, let's say it, from a top-down kind of polity that you find on the continent, that doesn't, we don't let it go because we're a common law. Britain is common law. America is common law. That's our tradition, and that's bottom up. It's completely different. And the Europeans don't understand that we're not just being. The Brits aren't just being awkward. It's just that it's deep in our blood, right? It's in our spirit, right? That the law comes up. It's got to come from the people. And the Americans get that, and this is why, in so many important ways, culturally, politically, the Brits do have more in common with. Actually, historically, the Brits who are Americans, right? And I can go on. Am I excited? I'm excited. But that's it. But we have to get the hell out of the EU.
Well,
Did I make that clear?
you nailed it.
Did I mention it?
Well, anyway, I should wrap it up. We want to keep this going. But anyway, Mr. Kerner, I appreciate it big
it's
time.
always a pleasure to talk to you,
absolutely.
Michael.
Well, thank you. This is again Michael Warnken for On Second Thought here at Freedom Fest, and back to you, Wagener, in the studio. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll bring you another one by Michael Warnken in Las Vegas.
Yeah, this is Michael Warnken here again for On Second Thought TV. I'm here at Freedom Fest with
Larry Sharp.
And who are you with?
With The Sharp Way, right there. The Sharp Way. It is an amazing show starting this month or maybe next month, depending upon how cool I decide I want to become. I'm kidding. It's going to be a great show. It's going to basically be a show online where it's live call-ins. You can call in and talk. Why? Because right now we have situations where left and right are fighting each other so badly, no one's hearing anybody. Okay. What can we do? We can talk to each other with a bit of respect, hear each other out, and focus on actual answers, which is why I want it to be a call-in. I want people to call in and say, hey, Larry, you're wrong because of that. Hey, Larry, what about this? And when they do that, we can talk to them and we can answer those questions.
That's interesting because Mr. Wagener's show On Second Thought, which airs down in Santa Barbara, he also does it live. He believes very principally that the censorship that exists seems to want to stop that, so he likes
100%. I completely agree. Look, when I ran for governor of New York last year, I ran for a year and a half. During that entire time, I did literally hundreds of media events. I did hundreds of live events. Every single one of them, unscripted, no notes, just me talking.
And that's hard for a lot of candidates to do.
It is. Not just that. I did a bunch of, particularly the youth. The youth like long form, right? Many people are accustomed to the idea of the soundbite. Yep. But if you're young, you for sure like long form, and even now people who are getting older, I got some gray hair, so I'm not young anymore, right? But even guys like us, we are beginning to like the longer form. I was on Glenn Beck for an hour. I was on Joe Rogan for 2 hours. I was on Dave Rubin for an hour, just talking with no notes and expressing what I think is real and what matters.
Yeah, and I guess in long form, it's not just the soundbite. You really got to get into the substance, and I think I remember when you went on Joe Rogan, one of the things that you guys talked about was like being a man, right? And what was the term you needed? You guys came up with? They needed some sort of thing that they accomplished.
Yes, I was talking about the idea, the idea of someone getting self-esteem is not built upon you telling someone how awesome they are. Yeah. It's about accomplishment. Yeah. Right? You've got to go do something, right? But here's the worst part, though, right? You gain good judgment from experience, from bad judgment. Yeah. So you've got to be able to make a mistake. You've got to be able to go out there and do something. And when you have a parent that is a bulldozer parent, that bulldozes everything away from the kid never makes a mistake. But sadly now our adults go in the same way. Right? We're trying to never make the mistake, never make the gamble. This actually goes to your censorship. Much of the censorship isn't because the person or the company actually believes that this thing is wrong or not. It's fear. Yeah. They're afraid that someone else might think it's wrong or bad, right? So even the individual who's in charge might go, I don't care if he says this or that. Oh, but my bosses might. Yeah. Oh, but the leadership might. Oh, but someone else might. And now all of a sudden I get the backlash of this. So I err on the side of cancel, stifle. I call this the idea of making a rule form an anomaly.
And I guess that makes all of us in society afraid of saying things or venturing forth or putting our toe out in the water, so to speak. It
does, 100%, right? The worst part, though, now, as you see, it's happening for people, things they've done years ago. So this guy made a mistake X number of years ago, therefore he's evil forever. Yeah. Right? Even if the guy says, no, it's a mistake, I think differently now, or I made an error, or even if the person believes that. But sometimes the person may not believe that because at the time, it might have been the right decision. Yeah. And now with hindsight, we look back and go, okay, it wasn't. Or maybe even worse, the culture then said it was the right decision. But the culture now says it isn't. Yeah. So what do you expect from someone?
So you ran for governor. Is it fair for me to say that New York politics is pretty brutal?
Horribly brutal, and when it comes to corruption,
creme de la creme.
Oh my God, we are good, right? I mean, Jersey might have us beat maybe, because Jersey's corruption is so good that it's just completely melded. You can't even tell, right? Ours is just so strong, no one even cares anymore, right? So we're 1 or 2 with Jersey. We're in there, right? Illinois tries to do it, but their guys go to jail. So you can tell how bad they are. They don't have it down yet, Right, they're trying. Yeah, Illinois, you're getting there, but your guy will go to jail.
I don't know. I think New Orleans and Washington D.C. are pretty high up there also.
Well, no, but as cities go, you're right. D.C.'s got us all beat. That's true, yes. But that's a city-state. I'm talking an entire state, yes. But yes, it's brutal, but not just that. Look, we did very well in New York. In New York, I ran as a libertarian, not as a Democrat or Republican.
Didn't hide.
No, didn't hide. I was openly libertarian, and I always am. And we were able to make the highest vote total we ever had, about 100,000 votes. We were able to get ballot access in New York State. We've never had it before. We've tripled the number of libertarians in New York State, right, in the last 6 months. And we only had 18 actual organizations in New York State out of 62 counties. Now we're working on 42.
Wow.
Huge difference. There is impact. If you spent time and money on the Democratic candidate, and you gave him time, money, and your vote, you literally threw your money in the garbage. Because Cuomo changed nothing. He didn't do what the Democrats want: cannabis reform, they want prison reform. None of it. So if you're a Democrat in New York, you're not getting what you want, you threw your money away. If you're a Republican in New York, you also threw your vote, time, money away, because that guy, none of his policies were put into place. He went away, so you threw your money away. But everyone said voting for me was a wasted vote. But if you voted for me, my ideas are being used. And I lost. I got 2% of the vote, and my ideas are being used.
And you built the party up.
And I built the party up on top of it. Like the MTA idea, to fix the MTA, they're using my ideas. To get rid of the SAFE Act, which for those of you who are not in New York, that's an anti-gun law. Right, one of my ideas was non-compliance. So that's already happening in Western New York. I also about fixing the Erie Canal. New York State has a massive Erie Canal, which is losing $95 million per year. Now, I talked about fixing it, making it commercially viable. Now they are.
And they were put in a pressure position, which we better do something about.
That's correct. But not just that. The Republican and conservative parties in New York State lost their leadership after my election.
Wow.
So if you're a Republican or conservative in New York State, you're welcome. Yes.
Well, thank you.
100%.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Well, I'm here with Larry Sharp. He gave us some really good insights. I got to appreciate what you're doing.
Of course.
And
go to thesharpway.com.
Oops, give it again.
Thesharpway.com. Go there, watch the show, help us out. Patreon, support us, help us out so we can keep going.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Wagener, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Larry Sharp and thesharpway.com, where the Libertarian actually made a difference in his
This
race.
is Michael
Even though he
Morgan
lost.
here for On Second Thought Television. I'm here in Las Vegas at the Freedom Fest with...
Nick Tumbleidis with U.S. Term Limits.
And you are a proponent of exactly what?
I'm a proponent of restoring Congress to the people. You know, this country was intended to have a citizen legislature where folks would go to Washington, D.C. for a short time, do the right thing, change the system before it changes them, and then come home to live under the laws that they make. It has mutated into a professional political class. We need to end that. We need to get a citizen legislature back in place again.
And the proposal that you have for that is what?
It's 3 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate.
So you're advocating for term limits, and can you explain to people what term limits are?
Yeah, term limits is the idea that you can't run for re-election in perpetuity. We have term limits on the president. The president is limited to 8 years in office. We have 36 governors with term limits, 15 state legislatures, 9 of the 10 largest cities in America. Congress doesn't have term limits. What's so special about them? Why do members of Congress get to serve in office for life? 82% of Americans want term limits on Congress. I think it's time that we give it to them.
Okay. So a person runs for office and they get elected, and basically the theory that you have is they stay in there with really no competition whatsoever.
Exactly right. The longer an incumbent is in office, the harder it becomes to get them out of office. It's like pulling a sword from a stone. Congress has a 10% approval rating, but a 95% re-election rate. To me, that's a sign of a horribly dysfunctional and broken system. We have to chart a new course. It would be great if we could say to ourselves, more time in office makes them better at their jobs. It doesn't. They get worse. We get more dysfunction because they spend most of their time raising money for re-election instead of doing their real jobs.
So what you're advocating for, and I put this out here, so it's agency. So the people or the voters want to make sure that the person that they send to Washington, D.C. has the interest of them, right? Correct. And you're saying given enough time in D.C., they lose that.
Exactly right. They stop listening to the voters. They stop talking to their constituents. There have been studies showing that The opinions of the average American have absolutely no impact at all on what gets passed and what doesn't get passed in Congress. If you had a citizen legislature, they would be a lot more responsive to the people.
And you believe that term limits would be the key way to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I guess, it goes back to the agency issue, and what you're saying is we don't have agency, we actually have what I guess people would term as capture.
I believe we do. Yeah, I believe we have a political class, and we are under capture. If we want to transfer power back to the citizens, term limits is the way to do it. It will make elections more competitive. It will crack down on corruption. It will reverse the incentives in Washington, D.C., so people go there mindful of what their constituents want rather than trying to build an empire and climb the ladder of seniority.
So let me play devil's advocate. There's another proposal that's out there. Basically, the idea is that the district size matters. And originally, I believe the biggest debate was 40,000 versus 30,000, and George Washington said 40,000, which they had proposed, was not adequate to protect the liberties of the citizen. And they said that the congressional districts should sit at 30,000. And what are the districts at now?
The average district size, I think, is about 750,000.
Which is about
for the U.S. House.
Which is about 25 times larger than what the founders said that the maximum size should be.
Yeah, I think it's a problem because when a district is that big, a member of Congress or a candidate for Congress can't bootstrap their way into office. You can't knock on 700,000 doors. And so the reliance in getting elected becomes on PACs and special interests. PACs and special interests give about $10 to incumbents for every $1 that they give to challengers. That produces a rigged system, produces barriers to entry where ordinary people can't run for office. That's another thing that term limits would also address. But I agree with you, districts should be a lot smaller.
Okay, and the fact that we haven't added more reps, but the population has grown, it means both the voters' vote loses value, but also how do the congressional members get their work done at this time?
What work?
Well, I mean, they do get work done, so obviously one man can't handle it, so he takes on a staff, right?
I think congressmen are delegating so much of their work to their staff and to the bureaucrats because, like we said, they spend 70% of their working time raising money. Every day, every Congress member on average leaves Capitol Hill, leaves their office, walks a few blocks down to a call center where they spend 5 hours on average each day on the phone, dialing for dollars, raising money either for their next reelection or to pay off the party so that they can get a prime spot on a committee. They're not reading the 1,000-page bills. They're not doing their jobs. They're delegating all of that to the staff, and they're passing the buck to the bureaucrats because when something goes wrong, they can blame the bureaucrats. They can blame the administrative state instead of taking responsibility for their own errors.
And who elects the staff members?
Well, the congressmen would select their own staff members, but the bureaucracy is unelected, and there have been some of them probably who've been appointed by presidents who were laid in the ground 40 years ago. So it really is the fourth branch of government. We have the largest bureaucratic state in the history of the world in terms of the dollars that we spend on it. It gobbles up 20% of our gross domestic product. We've got 2.5 million federal employees. Something has to give. We need members of Congress to exercise their power and take responsibility and start reducing that bureaucracy.
So the agency issue, so there's a little bit definitely what you're saying is term limits. You believe that would return it, and you believe that district size might also be an issue.
I think both are solutions to the puzzle. Nothing is a silver bullet, but what we're doing right now absolutely isn't working. The status quo is broken. We've got to take charge.
And I don't think anybody's, really surprised about what you're saying.
No, not at all. In fact, like I said, 82% of Americans want term limits, but what might surprise some people is it's also the most bipartisan issue in America. It's got support from 89% of Republicans, 76% of Democrats, and 83% of independents. The only people in our country who don't like this issue are the permanent political class that would be affected by it. But we have to overcome their self-interest. We need to unify as a country and get this done because it's too important not to.
All right. Well, there you have it. Here I'm with U.S. term limits and their thoughts on the matter. Thank you very much for giving your comments. Do you have a plug or anything?
Thank you. Yeah, if you want to learn more about term limits, if you want to get involved as a volunteer, go to termlimits.com. That's our website.
Okay. All right, we much appreciate it. Back to you, Wagener, in the studio. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nick and Michael. Term limits is only part of the answer. We also need more congressmen, smaller districts. What else you got, Michael?
Second Thought here at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas, and I am here with.
Doug Ginsburg,
And you are a sitting federal judge for?
the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit.
Wow. You have been in 3 forums today here, and what are the topics that you've been mostly covering?
Well, we're showing parts of the 3 episodes that are coming out on public television, the title of which is, for the series of which is A More or Less Perfect Union, all about the Constitution.
Okay. And I guess much of what you guys have been talking about is the administrative state and the reach of the power of the federal government.
In part, yes, because it's through the administrative agencies that the federal government has not only expanded its reach, but combined the authorities of executive, judicial, and legislative powers in one body.
And that, certainly flies in the face of the separation of powers, at least one of the tenets our founders were kind of keen on.
James Madison said that the combination of those powers was the very essence of tyranny.
And that's Federalist Papers, is that correct?
That's right.
You guys, I'm assuming, and I heard part of it, you got in some of the cases that were key on these issues.
We talked about a few cases, sure.
So you touched upon Wickford versus Filburn.
Well, that's a key case in terms of the court's interpretation of the commerce power. The court, I think, had already established that matters affecting commerce, not just commerce itself, could be regulated by the Congress, but they gave even that an expansive interpretation when they said that growing the wheat and feeding it to one's own cattle, or the grain, I should say, and feeding it to one's own cattle affected commerce, even though there was no transaction involved, no purchasing and selling, nothing moving across interstate lines, of course. And that affected commerce sufficiently to be subject to federal regulation.
So if I can go with your interpretation, and take it to the end, potentially one individual trying to grow, so you said wheat, let's say apples, and if Congress had made a law saying that they couldn't do that, potentially Congress could say that you couldn't grow apples in your own backyard.
Well, they've since have actually said something similar in the Affordable Care Act, with regard to the obligation to have insurance. Okay. That was upheld on the ground that, 4 of the justices of the 5 who thought it was constitutional thought that was a matter affecting commerce. Your failure to buy insurance was affecting commerce.
And being that this is the Freedom Fest, where there's certainly a very libertarian feeling, let's just say, sure. There's plenty of people here that would feel that was a concern to them.
That it was a mistake, I think most people here would think. I think it was a mistake myself.
Yeah.
And it's one that is now somewhat, at risk of being reversed, simply because the 5th vote was provided by the Chief Justice based on the taxing power, and now the Congress, I guess, has rescinded the tax, and so what basis is there now for upholding the statute, the Affordable Care Act? We'll find out.
Yeah, and is there a case in Texas right now on this topic?
That's right. It hasn't been decided even at the Court of Appeals level, but eventually will probably go back to the Supreme Court.
But the trial judge, he made a ruling indicating he's striking at the root of it.
I think that's correct. I think it's been argued in the circuit and the appellate court, and the judges showed a real interest in the matter, according to the press.
And we're waiting with bated breath to see what they do.
Well, we're waiting anyway.
All right. Well, anyway, I appreciate the interview. Very thought-provoking.
Well, thank you. Good to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. And appreciate your interview. And thank you very much. And back to you in the studio, Mr. Wagener.
Thank you, Michael. I wish I had put it in your ear to ask him about the original hidden 13th Amendment of 1812. I would have liked to have heard his answer. But got another one for us, Michael? Let's go back to Las Vegas, Nevada.
Pension issue. It sounds like, and I was talking to Boomer the other day, how much did you save by paying down the pension, as you saw it was a problem when no one else seemed to have touched it?
Okay, so just the low-hanging fruit is, of course, as a county supervisor, I'm also on about 20 different commissions. There's 2 or 3 different commissions I'm on that have far more influence and power than any other libertarian even has that's elected. But on one of these, RCTC, or Riverside County Transportation Commission, my first meeting with that as being on the executive board, I asked I said, do we know what the unfunded liability is for our staff in RCTC?
And your pensions.
And so what they came back the next month, and I kind of forgot about it, but the executive director says, hey, Jeff, we have an $8.1 million unfunded liability just with the staff of RCTC, which is tiny compared to my county staff.
Okay.
But the unfunded liability was 8.1, and I asked her, what would we save if we paid that off now and not kick that down the road like everything else? And she said it would be $7.5 million in interest. So I said, do we have the 8.1 million right now in the account? And she says, yes, we do. I said, well, I will make that motion. It passed unanimously. Stuff like that wouldn't even be brought up unless we had a libertarian in the room.
And not only that, they're not using the money on something else that just happens to come up.
No. This is just called fiscal prudence, fiscal responsibility, and just having someone with those principles that cannot be compromised. And just sometimes it's the voice. And after that happened, I went out there, and CVAG, or Coachella Valley Association of Government, they paid off half of their unfunded liability of $2 million. And then also a friend of mine that was on some water board over in San Bernardino said, Jeff, guess what?
We did it.
Because what you did, we've paid off our unfunded liability. So you have to get an idea rolling, but if you don't have libertarians in office, none of that stuff ever gets started.
So the domino effect, there was the snowball effect.
And I've always seen that because of the non-union 401k pension fire department that I formed before I left the state of Calamasa. Right now we've had Placentia, the city of Placentia, pulling away from the Orange County Fire Authority, and that's going to save their citizens millions of dollars, give them better service. But they came out to Calamasa and said, guys, how do we do it? That was when I was still on, right before I got on this other office. And also the city of Canyon Lake. We are having cities now follow, but it takes a libertarian to be bold enough to go against these special interests and start working for the people that put them in office.
And one can hope that that the community could see that, and then perhaps even spring up the idea that being a libertarian isn't a bad thing, or in fact one person jumping into the position and then causing sort of the ripple effect that you've caused.
Look, I'm going to say something that's very, very controversial, especially in this room at Freedom Fest.
Right.
There are good Republicans and good Democrats.
That is controversial.
And when I say that, I mean good.
Yeah.
They're good at governing. They're set in their ideology or whatever, but they know how to work and they know how to get things done.
Yeah.
Now, whether those things are good or bad, that's up to our ideology.
Yeah.
But we don't know until we get a lot more libertarians in on how effective those will be, and that's up to them, each individual. I happen to be very good at this because I've been watching, I've been observing, and you know what? When you're positively reinforced and you get things done, then you kind of know where not to waste your time.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've been strategic about how you've been doing it.
Very strategic. But you see, when we get more and more libertarians in office, the wheat will separate from the chaff.
Yeah.
And then we'll find out. But the more we get in, right now, we just have a reputation of losing.
Yeah.
So we got to get more winners in there. And then let's see the real hard work when they see how they govern.
Well, it sounds like you're pretty optimistic about fostering this in the party, and I guess I'm going to say it looks wonderful. And it's certainly a change and what the party really needed.
Well, if I hadn't been a registered libertarian since I was 19, I'd say I'm born again. But I'm telling you, that's the kind of passion and optimism I have, and people are ready for a positive message. And the other two parties right now are having a hard time with that.
Yeah.
They're kind of self-imploding. And they're using fear.
Yeah.
We can talk about the $22 trillion debt and all that, but at the end of the day, people want to hear a positive message that's going to impact their lives in a positive way, and then they'll take that very sacred thing, that's one freedom they still have left, their vote, and they'll put it on a horse that they think can not only win, but actually change their lives in a good way.
Okay. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to push? Having a good time at the convention?
Oh, God, listen, when I was a kid, I lived in Southern California. I can tell you I went to Disneyland 8 times. In fact, when I was feeling suicidal as a kid, I go, wait, if I kill myself, I can't go to Disneyland again. Freedom Fest is my new Disneyland.
There you go. Wow. Well, excellent. All right. Well, Mr. Hewitt, thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Michael.
Putting some win into the Libertarian Party, and hope our viewers appreciate and get your message. And I think, I think it resonates with the average citizen, the need to have fiscal responsibility and do the right thing, and I think that's what the party is trying to.
And if you stay consistent and you get things done, you're building up trust. And once you have trust, you can do anything.
Okay, well, good. All right. There it is for you guys. Back to you, Wagener, in the studio. Thank you.
Very much. Michael Warnken covering Freedom Fest for us in Las Vegas. You have another one, Michael? I would like to go to that next one. Yeah. We got a lot of breakdown equipment in the studio. I hope to get it up and running here in 2 weeks.
Yes, we are a nonprofit educational foundation out of Indianapolis, and what we do, we sponsor conferences and also publish books. And when I come to these shows, I bring our books, and basically what our company's mission is keep books in print that otherwise might go out of print. So economics, history, American history especially. We got a modern political thought titles over here, and some natural law, things like that. So
who are some of the authors or some of the works that you have?
let's see, we have, well, I don't have any up here because I sold them all.
That's excellent.
That's a good thing. But in our economics titles, we have Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich Hayek. I had some Bastiat. Yeah, Bastiat. And I still have some Seldons here. We have Israel Kirzner. Those would be our main economics titles.
Okay. You have any favorites?
Of the economics titles, there's some of they're economic thought. So some of it is very difficult reading. I mean, it's definitely, it's not.
Requires you to think?
Yeah, well, yeah, it requires you to think, but also it can be, you just can't read it by the pool. It's not exactly pool reading. But yes, I would say maybe the Hayek. I like the Hayek.
And you find that, so since we're at Freedom Fest, this is obviously a fairly libertarian, maybe quasi-conservative base. So, and is it fair to say that, thinkers are here?
Yes, of course. Yeah, definitely. Very curious people that might not normally read, that are non-academic, but they are thirsty for it and they want to learn about it.
And this is to fuel their mind, obviously.
Yes.
You said you've been coming here for a while?
Yes. Our first attendance was 2010. And I've come, I think, every year except I wasn't here 2011, so I think every year since.
Have you enjoyed this conference?
Yes, I do enjoy it. Yeah, it's fun. It's a new market for us. I meet a lot of new people that aren't familiar with us, so that's always good.
Any events that you've enjoyed that you've been able to sneak off to, or?
Let's see. I went, as far as Freedom Fest, I went to a friend's screening. Okay. He had a movie screening, and then
a lot of good movies.
Yeah, and
what was the one you saw?
Tank Man. Robert Anthony Peters. So I plugged him there. Okay. Yes, it's just a short film, and as far as Las Vegas, I just walk around usually.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm talking about the conference.
Yeah, the conference, okay. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Would you like to plug your organization?
Yes, I would. Actually, we have a great website, so libertyfund.org. In addition to being able to order our books there are also different resources, forums that you can visit. There's a Law and Liberty. There's an online Library of Liberty where a lot of
free books.
Yes, free things, and an econ library, and I think I'm forgetting one.
That's okay.
Yeah. Oh, we have the new Adam Smith works too.
What's the website?
It's libertyfund.org.
I have been on it, and it does have a lot of good stuff. So anyway, well, I appreciate you doing the interview for this.
Thank you very much.
All right, back to you in the studio, Mr. Wagener.
Well.
Yeah, this is Michael Warnken here at Freedom Fest for On Second Thought Television.
Well, we lost the audio feed on that one. Sorry about that. It's not easy to do it from a studio where a city intentionally lets equipment break down and never buys anything new for years. But we're doing our best, and we're going to bring you another interview from Michael here in about 5 minutes. I hope later we'll give you the address to write to the U.S. District Court, and you write them and say, hey, we want to see camera in Anthony Troy Williams' trial so we can see and judge for ourselves whether it's a star chamber proceeding. And be sure and use that phrase, star chamber proceeding, because they are. That's why they don't want cameras in there. Now, we're ready to roll. We'll go back to Freedom Fest with Michael Warnken.
Yeah, this is Michael Warnken here at Freedom Fest in lovely Las Vegas, and I am here with...
Jeremy Corden with...
And you are with who?
Goldback Inc.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Goldback does is we've produced the first circulating gold currency in like 50 years, something like that. And the way we've done it is we've created the Goldback, which is 1/1000th of an ounce of gold, retails for about $2.50. And right now we're signing up hundreds of Utah businesses to take this as payment.
As payment in lieu of a fiat currency U.S. dollar.
Or, in addition to it.
Okay.
We're not telling anybody that they can't take the dollar anymore. We're just saying, hey, if you would like to take gold as an option, we'd like to add you to our list of businesses here in Utah of, people that take gold.
Wow, that's so basically outside of the U.S. currency system, you are reintroducing the gold standard.
The gold standard kind of failed because all the gold was in one spot, and then until it wasn't. And all the gold was backing the money until it wasn't. I would argue that this is better than the gold standard. It's a truer sound money because the gold is in your hand. It's not a note saying that the gold is somewhere else. The gold is literally inside this note. It's 1/1000th of an ounce.
Is there a way for people to verify it's gold? I mean, I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate. I mean, it looks like gold to me. It looks like you took some time to it. Is there a way that people can verify?
Yeah, absolutely. If you took one of these and you melted it down, that'd get you 1/1000th of an ounce of gold. All the polymer would burn off, and anybody could do that.
Cool way of doing that?
We have a third-party company that comes through and audits all the batches that we do.
Okay. Huh. And you getting good reception to this?
Oh my goodness, I've never seen something this explosive ever. I tell people about it and they run over to our booth and they buy it out. These things this is kind of the sneak peek for Freedom Fest. Our major launch is going to be at the end of September, and we're going to have a 1, 5, 10, 25, and 50, which is 1/20th of an ounce of gold available for sale. If you don't live in Utah, you can buy them outside the state. They may be you can use them for barter probably in your state, but we believe that they are a Utah legal tender because of the Legal Tender Act, which was passed in 2011.
2011. And what does the Legal Tender Act do?
So Legal Tender Act means that most gold and silver inside the state of Utah is a legal tender. Okay. It's a voluntary legal tender, but it means that it's legally money within the state of Utah.
And has anybody given you any grief about this?
Not yet.
Are you concerned that might happen?
Bring it on. Well, no, not too worried. There's thousands of gold products out there. There's thousands of local currencies out there. We're combining the two. We're not even the first people to combine the two. You can buy carrot bars or something like that. We just think that we did it better.
Okay, interesting. Do you have a question?
I was going to ask, how would that work in paying taxes and other state fees?
So the question is, how would that work if you wanted to use it for, let's say, you wanted to pay Utah state taxes, or if you wanted to pay, say, your federal income tax? Can you pay it with that?
We would have to convince the state to take the gold as payment. The federal government is slow adopting new things.
And then might even be adverse to this.
Maybe. The federal government is slow opposing things often. The federal government's a lot of fiefdoms of different power and different structures. What we're finding currently is that there's a lot more pro-gold attitudes in Washington, D.C. But what we aren't finding is that people aren't spending gold as a currency, and I think the biggest reason why is because there's no small increments. You're not running around with a $1,400 coin in your pocket, looking for something to buy, and then you got to get change, and you got to authenticate, make sure it's real. And if you have a 10th ounce coin, then 10 of those doesn't add up to be a full ounce. And we're trying to solve all those problems with the Goldback. There's never been a gold product in all of human history that is designed to pay for a dozen eggs or a loaf of bread or a small transaction. You've always had to have like a copper standard or a silver standard or something pegged to the gold standard for small transactions, and we feel like we've solved that problem with the one Goldback.
Okay, well, interesting. What's the name of your company?
Goldback Inc.
And what website should they go to?
So if you want to buy it, you can go to the United Precious Metals Association in Utah. It's upma.org. Or you can go to utahgoldback.com for a list of people that will sell it to you in Utah. I think it's going to be most of the coin stores there by September.
And do they have a list of vendors also that accept them?
So we're going to be publishing that list at the very end of September. We're going to be kind of unveiling just how big that list is, who the people are, and what kind of businesses we have.
Interesting. Okay, well, I appreciate meeting you here, and it's a very interesting product you have here, and it sounds like it's adding to liberty. So
absolutely.
All right, well, good. Well, this is back to you, William, to On Second Thought, back in the studio. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. Gold-backed ink in Utah. I wish you'd brought some samples back, Michael. Hope you bring some back. Here's another interview from Michael Warnken at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. Here we go.
Yeah, this is Michael Warnken here at Freedom Fest in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am here with
Michelle Darnell.
And you're a former Libertarian candidate, is that correct?
Yes, I ran in 2016, 2017. 2017, I got 31% of the vote in a deep blue district.
In a deep blue state.
And deep blue state.
And what state was this?
Washington State.
And the office that you were running for is?
I was running for state representative.
Libertarians don't get elected very often. Most of them who run are running at a very big disadvantage. How did you do?
I think we did fairly well. We didn't do as well as I might have hoped, but I think that was just a consequence of the lack of apparatus in our political party and my failure to be able to put together that apparatus quickly enough. In my district, there were 91,000 registered voters. We sort of figured we needed to reach about 21,000. We reached 9,000, and that's reaching 9,000 people at the door. That's not to say that we didn't reach via alternative media. I was actually interviewed with our local TV station, our newspaper, Seattle Times, but we just weren't effective in reaching enough people at the door, in my opinion.
So, but you had a good ground game. You had supporters, but you felt as a Libertarian the party didn't support you as much as you'd hope, or as much as the other parties had.
Well, I'm not going to blame it entirely on the party. I think our party is still sort of in its infancy, but correct. We don't have the party apparatus that the other two parties seem to have. I mean, they've had decades and decades to build their party apparatus, and really, politics is not complicated. It's a numbers game. It's people times time times money. We're never really going to, well, I won't say never, but it's going to take us a long time to win on the money. So we need to use time to our benefit. And in my particular case, I started too late as well. And people. And we need to be able to effectively manage those people. I had over 100 volunteers that signed up, ready to go, but I didn't have the middle management people to direct those volunteers. And, those were some bad calls I made personally. Okay. I own that. And so that's why right now what I'm doing, looking forward to help other candidates and my own self, if I happen to run again, is to build that party, that structure so we can train some middle management type people. And when I say middle management, I'm talking campaign manager, treasurer, volunteer coordinator.
So what you're saying is perhaps if you were running as an RRD, more of that would have been available, and you would have had, or at least felt a little more success.
Correct. As a matter of fact, when I ran as a D in 2014, which was my first run, and I had no experience back then and no name recognition, which now I have a little bit. I got 37% right out of the gate. So I got 31% as a Libertarian, and I had already run a couple of times, so I had some name recognition. So you sort of see, the party apparatus, the party label behind you. People know what to expect. With Libertarians, when I go to the door, most of the time people are pretty happy to have an alternative, but they don't really understand what a Libertarian is, and they certainly don't necessarily know who I am. So that's why your ground game is so important.
Do you find that people have a positive response to the Libertarian message and when you talk to them?
Oh, absolutely. Usually, now, mind you, we do target. I would typically hit soft R's, soft D's, and independents.
So you could tell who a soft R was.
Yeah, I could. We had data. But of those people, and then sometimes, every once in a while I get a wild hair and I just hit anybody, But overwhelmingly, people seem very happy to have an alternative. They just, sometimes they didn't know what a libertarian really was. Hey, are you one of those people that wants heroin at my schoolyard? I had to sort
And what did you tell them?
I'm not that libertarian, and that's actually not my issue. I got into politics because of the crony capitalism, the bank fraud I saw, what I'm seeing in the courts. I actually think we need massive court reform. Where there is no justice, there is no liberty, and I don't think people are paying enough attention to what's going on in the judicial environment right now.
So the judiciary, you're saying that you see things that go on in the judiciary that are unjust, let's just say, and perhaps what you're suggesting is had you been elected, you might use the position in the legislature to start opening a door into that?
I might have worked on some things. One of the reasons that I was running was to make amendments to the Deed of Trust Act specifically, and we don't have enough time in this interview to really go into those details. But that's a non-judicial foreclosure process in my state that I wanted to address. Now, as I've been involved...
And you've seen abuses in that?
Absolutely, 100%.
And you feel that that the legislature, which you believe is not taking it up, should take it up?
I believe they should. I believe that they are failing to see the connection of those abuses and the current homelessness crisis. When I ran in 2014, I was talking about this, and I was talking about the train that was coming our direction in terms of homelessness. I was told by sitting legislators at the time, Michelle, why are you talking about this issue? Nobody cares about homelessness. Well, fast forward now to 2019, we have a massive crisis. We bailed out the banks to the tune of $7.7 trillion. They in turn kicked people out of their homes.
And they were making bad loans as well.
Well, we can go into all that, but the reality is there's a lot of misrepresentation. They use the HAMP program as a bait and switch. Long story short, they rigged the system, kick people out of their homes, and then there's other factors as well that affect supply and demand. But what happened was then rents go up because you have increased demand. Yeah. People who can't keep up with rent and come up with a first, last, and a deposit, well, where do they end up? They end up on the street. If they end up on the street, sometimes they become part of this culture. They're exposed drugs, alcohol, those sorts of things. So
and they have no one in the legislature that are advancing this issue on their behalf.
They don't have a voice in the legislature. I mean, it's. I'm not going to say that there's nobody in the legislature that cares.
But it sounds like you would make a very direct and concerted effort on that.
Well, absolutely. It's why I was running. I've got a fire in my belly. I care about the people.
Well, you and I have known each other for a couple of years, and you know one of my issues, which is district size, lack of representation.
Yes.
So as a person who's run for Senate, it's a fairly large district.
I ran for Senate and I ran for State House.
And would you feel that if there were more reps and smaller districts, that would it be easier to run? And two, do you think you'd have a better shot?
Well, absolutely. It'd be less expensive to run. And remember when I mentioned the 91,000 voters? If my district was more like 10,000, I could reach those doors. And not only that, but once I got elected, I could have more interaction with those voters. I think right now, what ends up happening is your particular vote, because it's such a large district, the power of your vote diminishes significantly, and it also makes the single, the electeds, the legislator or whatever you're looking at, more valuable and more up for the, up for the taking.
And they would likely be resistant to this.
I would expect they would be resistant to this.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're needing to move along here, but it was important for me to meet with you. I appreciate you. We've only had a few women, and it's good to see a good, active libertarian woman. Anything you want to plug right now?
Well, you need to get more women. 32% of the Libertarian Party is women, but half of the voting population is women. We got a little problem there. So, Michael, interview some more women.
All right. You got it. All right. Well, thank you very much. Back to the studio for you, William Wagener. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Michelle, there from the state of Washington at Freedom Fest. And I later did an interview with her, which was about a week ago, on bank and judge allowing fraudulent documents by attorneys claiming to represent bank, and I can't wait to bring you that interview. Except our studio equipment that could play it back is broken at this point in time. Hopefully in 2 or 3 weeks, the equipment will be all new and up and running. I'm going to have an address flashed on the screen here, so be sure you have a pen. I want you to write this Judge Kobayashi. We're not ready yet, but we're going to play you another interview, and get your pen or pencil ready. I want you to write this judge and say, you want to see a camera in Anthony Troy Williams' trial, which is scheduled for January of 2020. So we've got lots of time. We need to put letters in so they don't just do this Star Chamber proceedings where they ignore the laws, ignore the procedure, give them a fake public pretender defender, and say, oh, he had a fair trial. I've been to these courtrooms, both federal and state, and if there's no camera running, you can be sure the judge is sticking the screws and avoiding following the law. That's my observation on like hundreds and hundreds of cases. I get sick sometimes. I go home and I want to throw up because I just watched liberty and freedom destroyed in state and federal courtrooms all across this land. You can make a difference. So get your pencil ready. Now, Michael, if you got another interview there for us at Freedom Fest, thank you for that one with Michelle.
This is Michael Warkin here for On Second Thought Television here in Las Vegas. We are in the lovely ballroom in the evening, and we are with...
Jeff Singer.
And you are with?
I'm a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, and I'm also a practicing surgeon in Phoenix, just about 300 miles south of here.
Oh, wow. That's quite a repertoire. So this is being Freedom Fest, Libertarian Conference, and Cato would be more of a libertarian think tank. Is that correct?
Yeah, I like to call it Global Freedom Headquarters. Cato Institute is a libertarian think tank. We were founded in 1977. For the first couple of years, it was in San Francisco when it got started. Then it moved to Washington, D.C., I think it was around 1980, 81. And we have the full portfolio of areas of policy work. I'm in the Department of Health Policy Studies.
Being a surgeon.
Yeah, that kind of made sense.
Yeah.
But we go everything from foreign policy to trade policy to immigration policy, defense, fiscal, you name it. Every policy area you can think of, we have a department. We also have a global outreach, and we have a Department of Center for Global Freedom, and we connect with other liberty-minded and free market think tanks around the world, and we cooperate. And what I like about the Cato Institute, the reason I'm actually honored to be able to work there, because my career has been as a medical doctor, but in later life I've always had this other passion for policy. And in later life I've gotten involved with this, and now this is occupied.
When you say this, Freedom Fest.
No, when I say this, public policy.
Oh, public policy.
And what I think is great about the Cato Institute, it's got this really, it's got intellectual rigor.
Okay. So meaning people challenge what you don't just throw something out there. Okay.
Everybody is really open to discuss anything. If you're going to publish something, it's got to be really
fortified.
You've got to make sure that your facts can be backed up. And when we're doing research, we go where the research leads us. We're libertarian. Yeah. But if we end up finding some data that
takes you in a new direction
that we didn't want to find, we
got to go with it.
Got to say what we found, because your integrity is what makes people believe you.
Yeah.
So.
I told you my experiences in 1999. I worked at, in D.C. I was attending Georgetown University, and they had put me together with the Heritage Foundation. I worked there for a little while. The organization is the Fund for American Studies, and I had a chance to go to Cato, and it was interesting because I didn't take that up. And we had an event at Heritage, and I forget what it was about, but we were talking about the issue of steel. And, being young and idealistic at the time, my view was that, steel is important. Yeah, we can trade it, but we really should be domestically producing steel because, it's the backbone of all the U.S. corporations, our defense is tied to it. And one of my own fellow interns there at Heritage looked at me and he said, "What are you, a socialist?" And he was, and I looked at him and I'm, those are fighting words. If you're at Heritage and somebody says you're a socialist, and I'm just thinking, well, no, I think we really should have steel, And somebody at Cato, he was there. He's kind of an interesting guy. He had, it's a common style now, but he had the hair that was all over the place, and he's a little different. He says, no. You need to understand that steel it's really caustic. It's expensive to make. If you can have somebody else make it, do so and import it. And he was more persuasive.
Comparative advantage.
Yeah. And he really took his time to explain it. Whereas the Heritage guy really, it's like.
Well, that could have just been a bad experience you had with one person.
No, I think I felt that there was a different energy to the people that worked at Cato, and it was more persuasive and.
Well, what I like to think is, we're libertarian. We're not conservative. There's sort of like if you had Venn diagrams, there'll be a part where the diagram sort of overlaps. So there'll be certain areas where people who trade, but also things like the drug war, criminal justice. There are certain areas where we have common ground with people who are on the left. And so instead of basically...
Well, the left and the right, correct?
Right, but I'm saying there's these overlap areas, and what we try to do is develop relationships, friendly relationships, so that when we're on the opposite side of the issue, they don't think of us as bad guys.
As hostile.
Guys that they disagree with.
Well, let me ask you really quick, and how do you feel the influence is? I mean, as more of a libertarian think tank, most of the people holding offices are R's or D's. There's a couple independents, but is it influential? Do you get policy changes?
Well, I think so.
Michael, thank you for the
health
interviews
savings
from
accounts that
Las
exist
Vegas.
today that derived from a
Write
book that
that
Cato published in the 90s called
Judge
Ancient
in
Power.
Hawaii. Don't let this happen in a star-chambered proceeding. Thanks for watching. William Wagener out.